Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Build and Scale Boldly podcast, the podcast for purpose-driven women entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses with more profit, more ease, and more impact. I'm your host, Dr. Leti Alto, a physician, entrepreneur, and real estate investor. And today we're going to be talking about using AI as your headhunter. Now, if you've ever felt like finding the right employee is overwhelming, risky, or a giant guessing game, you are not alone. I have felt that way so many times. But here's the truth. You don't have to throw up a job post anymore and hope for the best. There's actually another way. If you're here to grow your business on purpose with the right person in the right seat, fully aligned with your vision, your values, and your culture and your team, then I found a new method. And today I'm going to share both my story of how I recently used AI to find and connect with potential hires for a position in my company and walk you through the exact framework I call the Beyara Headhunting AI Blueprint. So grab a pen because this episode is like a free masterclass on using AI as your personal headhunter, and you're going to really enjoy it. So here's the thing. Most of us as founders or CEOs don't need another post the job on Indeed and hope moment. We need real support, people who actually are built for our businesses and our culture. And that's why I created this AI Blueprint. It really is a step-by-step system to find, vet, and confidently hire the right person, sometimes even someone who has their own business. And that was the case using AI as kind of your headhunter. Now, I didn't just build this in theory. I actually live this. I use this exact process recently in a search for a major new role in one of my companies. And the results really blew me away. So I wanted to be able to share them with you. So let me tell you my story and map each part of the blueprint so you can see how it worked for me and how it could work for you as well. Now, this all started with me saying to myself, hey, I want to use AI to be able to help me find a position. And I didn't want to find a position with somebody who was already out there looking for a job. I actually wanted to use AI as a headhunter, and I wanted AI to help me find somebody who already had a job, who already was doing something, and I wanted to be able to attract them to my company. And so that was kind of the premise of how I started this whole experimentation, which turned out really, really well for me. So the first thing I had to do this was define the role. And it had to start with clarity. I had to start with outlining the outcomes, right? This is something we've talked about in this podcast before. What outcomes did I want this person to deliver? What results were they responsible for? I wanted to outline what success would look like. And then I also actually wanted to know if I could find somebody with my compensation range. And because I use my AI all the time, my ChatGPT knows me really, really well. And so it kind of knows my personality, knows my business. And so just by providing that little bit of detail, it was able to help me be able to start the search pretty quickly, even with a very, very short prompt, because it already understood me, my business, my culture, and who would fit in with my company. Okay, so I defined those results for AI, and I did it all with ChatGPT, but you could use Grok or any other AI. And then I used this prompt, which is, I'm hiring for this position. The person should have this type of experience and this type of skill set. And I lay this all out in my download for you guys. So I'm not going to go into detail, but I just asked it to go find me people who were real candidates who it didn't even matter if they had their own business or they already had a job. I wanted to go find people. Now, one of the things that AI did was it actually went into LinkedIn and it went into the websites and it was looking for professionals who were already out there doing the work that I was asking for. I was asking for somebody who had led a 7-figure business before. Again, I was looking for people who weren't necessarily looking for a job, but they were the best out there. And so what I ended up finding was a lot of people who already own their own companies. And because of the language that they were using on their websites, I was able to identify them and identify that they'd be a good culture fit, also a good personality fit, and had the skill set that I was looking for. So I gave AI this little prompt, and sure enough, it came back with a list of 5 people. Now, at this point, I had this list of 5 people, and I could have gone and done the digging. But instead of doing that, I actually wanted AI to do it for me. And so I said, knowing everything that you know about me and about the company, and now these 5 individuals, who is the best fit for me and why? And so I asked AI to do that initial thinking of who was a really good fit for me so I didn't have to go through all 5 people. Now, what that meant was that AI gave me an individual and told me why they were such a good fit for my company. And it was very interesting. It was even saying things like, this person is humble and this person will show up in this way. And then I asked it to compare the people that had also given me in that list. And AI actually was able to say, well, this person will be a better fit for you for this reason. This person may like push back at you too much or may not have enough experience telling stories and really doing the marketing, whereas this person does. So AI was actually able to tell me why some of the other candidates weren't as good fits, as well as telling me why that one individual out of the 5 was the best one. And I really feel like at that moment, it was like AI was this executive recruiter that understood me and understand my business at a different space. And can you imagine how long it would have taken a headhunter to be able to really understand me and understand my company to be able to make this source of assessment? But because I use AI all the time, because I'm always asking it questions, because I'm having it help me with my marketing, because I'm having it help me with my emails and things like that, or, with creating new products, it actually knows me really, really well. It knows my company very well, way more than any individual headhunter would ever know me and my company. And so I actually trusted that the fit it was bringing to me was a much better fit. And also note, for AI to go search the whole internet and looked in LinkedIn, look at websites and to be able to read all that, there's no way a headhunter is doing that level of research. So that was also a big win for me because I can't even imagine how much time it would have taken somebody who is a headhunter to be able to go do that work. Okay, so I now have this list of the person who's the best out of 5. And the next thing I did is I went and vetted them myself, right? Because I wanted to go and see them. So I asked AI to give me their LinkedIn profile directly so I could click to it. I didn't have to search. And then I went and looked at the LinkedIn profiles and I went to look at their websites. And what I wanted to see is, how do they communicate what they're about? How do they write? Do I like what I see? And do they seem like a fit for me in the company? And I have to say, the first person and actually the second person that I found aligned beautifully with my mission. And then when I went and dug in deeper to the other candidates, I didn't necessarily find that. So I really have to say that AI was right about who was the best candidate. Now, I'm mentioning multiple candidates. And the reason I'm mentioning that is I actually ended up saying initially, hey, I want somebody to fill this role for this salary or below. But then I was kind of curious, what would happen if I would pay a higher salary? And so I actually had AI say, hey, if I'm willing to pay a little bit more in salary, who would you suggest for me instead? And so now at this point, I had another 5-person list. And I asked AI again to say which person on that 5-person list was the best fit for me and the reasons. And I got one individual that was kind of pulled out, and I was able to go online and I was able to look at their website and their LinkedIn as well and get a sense of them. So now I had 2 really great candidates for this position. One who I knew was going to be a little bit less expensive from a salary, and one who I knew was going to be a little bit more expensive. And I just want to tell you up front, when I did go to talk to these individuals, with both of them, I brought up salary during my initial conversation because I wanted to understand how much it was going to take for them to be motivated to leave their businesses, because both of these individuals had their own businesses. And so I wanted an assessment of whether or not it was going to work for me to be able to hire them down the road for these roles. And so I really wanted a sense of what they would expect for a salary that was very motivating for them to want to come in as a W-2 instead of leading their own business. I will say that AI was about 30,000, 40,000 off in expectations for what it was telling me this individual would want to make versus what the individual wanted to make. I think ultimately you have to talk to people about salaries, and money is something that a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about, but I think it's really, really important, especially if you're expecting somebody to leave their own business that they've been operating. You really have to understand what salary is going to take for them to want to do that. And so it's an important piece, but I will say that this is one area that I found AI was off. Now, this is my N of 1, so AI could be more accurate with when you guys go and do this, but I want to give you that kind of insight that it was a little bit off. And so just be prepared for somebody that you talk to that AI might say, hey, their range is going to be, around 100,000, but they might actually say, no, I really want to make more like 130,000 or 140,000 in order for me to want to come work for your company. So anyway, at this point, we're at the state where I've gone and I've reviewed my 2 candidates' LinkedIn profiles, their websites. I've gotten a sense of how they write, how they present themselves, what kind of work that they're doing, about their businesses. And so the next step was to reach out to them individually. Now, I could have let AI craft a message, but I wanted to do this myself. I didn't want it to feel like it was coming from AI. AI would have crafted a very beautifully messaged thing to be able to send to these candidates, but I didn't want to do that. I actually said them both a message that was just like, hey, I'm looking for this position in my company. And, this is what my company's about. AI said you were the perfect match. AI went and searched the internet, searched LinkedIn, and said you were the perfect match. I'd love to talk to you. And within a couple hours, both of them had written back to me. And I will say within 2 days, I had spoken to both of them. And they both were willing to have a conversation very, very quickly. They were intrigued enough once they heard about me and what my business was about and our culture and what we were looking for. And once I got a sense of what salary range they wanted to make, they were both intrigued enough to consider the opportunity of coming in, doing a project with me, and being able to assess if it was a right fit on both sides. So that step 5 that I just outlined is reaching out yourself or reaching out with an AI message to set up a meeting. In both cases with the candidates, I made sure to read them the description that AI had given me about why they were such a good fit. Neither of them looked at that description and said, oh, no, that's not me. That doesn't make sense. Both of them looked at it and were like, yeah, that's exactly me. So that first meeting that I did with both of them, it taught me a lot. We covered things like their experience, what salary they would expect, whether this role excited them. I did the, 3 questions that I always do. I asked them about their past, their present, and their future and tried to understand their human needs. I made sure to get a sense of whether or not they would leave their businesses and what motivated or why they would consider that. Remember that AI can actually help you prep these conversations. So then the next thing I did after I chatted with them and gauge their interest and they were interested is I asked them to do a couple personality tests because I always like to get a DISC profile and an understand myself profile. But really, I wanted to see that they would match with who they were going to be working with most closely. And I also wanted an assessment of what were going to be the things that gave them energy. Especially the DISC profile, it's not about whether or not somebody can do different jobs. It's about what kind of tasks give them energy. And so I really wanted to understand their personality type and whether or not they were actually a good fit for that role that I was looking for. Now, the next piece that I did was I have another individual who's on my executive team who I really trust her opinion. And so I had both these individuals meet with my team member and had her assess and had her kind of look for places that she was concerned about and ask them about those. And also it gave the candidates the time to ask questions that they maybe wouldn't have wanted to ask of me. I really made it clear to them, like, we're here to be transparent. We want this to be a good fit on both sides. We're not here to hide anything. So you can absolutely ask any question of my executive about how the team works, what the job is like, so that you can get a real assessment of whether or not you want to work here. Because I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. I want to make sure that they go in with eyes wide open. They understand the team, they understand the team dynamic, and they understand the role, and they understand what will be asked of them. So in both cases, another member of my team evaluated the people. She had some concerns coming out of it, some things that she's going to want to assess. But what we were asking these individuals to do actually is do a paid trial, because in both cases, they had their own businesses and I didn't want them to close down their businesses, come work for me, and then find out it wasn't a good fit. I wanted to make it a low risk situation for them and I wanted to make it a low risk situation for me. So in both cases, that first conversation I had with them, I said, I really want to see your personality, DISC, and understanding myself assessment. I want you to talk to another team member to really assess whether or not this is something you want to try. And then if so, we're launching our course, our Zero to Freedom course in the next month. I would love to bring you in and have you run a project as part of that to really assess if it's a good fit on our side and it's a good fit on your side, because I wouldn't want you to have to shut down your business and then find out it's not a great fit. And both of them were actually very open to this. So all this happened in the first conversation. Once they finished that conversation with my other executive, we were able to kind of sit down and say, okay, what's it going to take for you to come work and run, a 6-week trial? And how much would you want to be paid for that? These are the outcomes, of course, for that trial. So I provided that piece to them so they could assess if they wanted to do it. Now, initially, both people agreed to do it, and I was going to bring both of them on, which I know is a little bit tenuous because you're bringing 2 new members in to kind of assess. But what I had seen at that point after I had interviewed both of them was one really was much more qualified for the role that I wanted them to be in. The other one just didn't have the experience. So even though AI had given me an individual, that it said was a really great fit for this specific role, the person that had that lower salary range did not have the experience nor the gravitas that I thought they needed to have to be in this position. So for me, it was really at that point, like I would hire this higher paid person who was going to be actually be a candidate for that position I was initially searching for. But the other candidate was really strong candidate as well and could fill a role in my marketing team. And so I introduced that idea to that individual. And, once we discussed salary, they said, yes, I would consider that, but I really want to be part of the leadership team. And so I kind of found a way to make that happen. So I was going to bring both of them in to run these side-by-side kind of trials to see if I could actually fill those two roles. The day before the trial was set to start, the other individual, after they saw all of the outcomes and went to sign the contract, had kind of second thoughts and said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do this in the 10 to 15 hours a week I can allot to this project. And, I have opportunity costs because I'm not going and doing projects for my own business. And so it's just really not worth my time. And so that was a decision they kind of made last minute, which then, I went and flexed and did other things to find somebody to help me with that role. But it was really, really useful for me to have that insight because this was a person I was really actually trying to find a way to meet all their needs and find a way to meet their requests to kind of see if this would work. It was getting kind of complicated on my side too. So I think it was a really great situation in the end that they decided to opt out because I think it would have been a challenging fit for me to be able to meet all of their needs and be able to keep them happy long term, to be honest. So then in the end, what happened was one individual came into my company. They're doing a trial. It's ongoing, but boy, there's nothing like working with somebody to really get to know how they tick, how they react to things, how they lead. It's such a useful thing is to run a trial with any individual. And I have to tell you, usually when you bring on new team members, you bring on new employees, within a couple weeks, you know if it's going to work or not. And so I think this is a really ideal thing to do with somebody in for a 3, 4, maybe 5-week trial and work with them and to see how it works and have a natural ending point where you really have a decision tree where you can say, yes, this works for me and my company, or no, it doesn't. And they can do the same for them. Meantime, they continue to keep their business, keep their clients if they run their own business, or if they're working somewhere else, is this something that they can do on the weekends? They can run a trial for a couple weeks so you really understand what it's like to work with them so you can have a real honest answer by the time you're done with that trial. So what I plan to do after this trial is I'm going to have AI assess the notes I take, assess the patterns, assess what's happened. I'm also going to see what my team felt working with this individual, but ultimately it's going to be a gut check for me. Did this individual really fit in with the team? Did they level up how all of us work? Because honestly, I think if you're going to grow your business, if you're going to take your business to the next level, you have to hire people that are better than you. You have to hire people that are smarter than you. And so each individual that you bring on your team has to level up the entire team. So after all that, here's the bottom line. You really don't have to hire headhunters anymore. Seriously, I can't believe that AI can go and search the internet and search tens of thousands of websites and LinkedIn profiles to find fits for you, but it really can. And it can give you the structure and clarity to really know if somebody's a good fit for you and fit for your culture based on, the data you feed it and also it knowing you because you work with it so much. And remember, you can always go and interview this person, look at their website, be able to assess if it's a good fit from interviews, have them meet your team, and then run this trial. I really think a trial is a great way to assess, especially if it's a high-risk candidate, like it's a high-ranking individual you're bringing into your business. You don't want to make a mistake with that. That's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's a lot to bring somebody in your company and then find out they're not a great fit a couple weeks later and then move them out. Now, I have to admit there's no magic hire that's going to fix everything, but there is somebody out there who can help you grow your business boldly. And they might even be easier to find than you even expect. And they might not even be looking on Indeed or something else right now. They might actually have their own businesses and you can go and find them and you can have them come work with you in your company. Now, if you want to see all of this laid out step by step, I've put together a free companion guide for you, the Beyara Headhunting AI Blueprint, how to find, vet, and boldly hire the right person for your business using AI. And inside the guide, you'll get actually the exact prompts that I used. I mean, I talked through them very quickly, but I'll give you the exact prompts. I'll give you a step by step breakdown of the whole process, how to run these personality tests, how to do the trial. And then I'm also going to give you some bonus prompts that you can use if you get stuck in the process. And you can download it by clicking on the show notes below. We'll put the link in there. And if you try this system, please DM me or tag me on Instagram with Beyara Women. And I'd love to celebrate with you. I'd love to hear your experience. Now, I end with a reflection question. So the question is, where are you in your business still winging hiring or team growth? And what's one thing you can do to bring more clarity and boldness into your process and maybe even use AI to do it this week? Now, if this episode gave you clarity or inspiration, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Build and Scale Boldly podcast. And if you know another bold woman entrepreneur who needs this message, send her this episode. Let's normalize growth. Let's normalize ease and keep dreaming big and keep leading boldly. And most of all, keep building the business and the life you love. I'll see you next time.